Good evening and thank you for joining us. Well, major charges have been laid against the driver who survived a fatal collision last weekend on the Thunder Bay Expressway. The crash happened at 3 o'clock Saturday morning on the expressway just north of Arthur Street. A pickup truck collided head-on with a car and resulted in the deaths of Thunder Bay couple Daniel Brooks and Michelle Parker. The victims were both 28 years old and were planning their wedding in the days before the tragic accident. Local OPP have now charged 27-year-old Tyler Boyley of Thunder Bay with 1 count of impaired driving causing death, 1 count of dangerous driving causing death, and 1 count of criminal negligence causing death. Detachment Commander Jim Graham explains the fatal collision.
Boyley's vehicle first contacted the snowbank and guardrail on his side of the highway, went up onto that guardrail and then veered across into the oncoming lane of traffic where he struck the vehicle driven by the deceased individuals. The physical evidence we have at this point suggests that Mr. Boyley was impaired when he was driving the vehicle.
Boyley, who is from Thunder Bay, remains in custody pending a bail hearing over the weekend or early next week. A joint funeral for Parker and Brooks was held this afternoon.
Local Bombardier workers are celebrating the latest order for Toronto subway cars. The TTC has given Bombardier the contract to produce 60 more rocket cars. The first subway contract was awarded back in 2006, and these 60 cars bring the total number now to 480. The roof and walls of the car are being manufactured in Quebec and then are assembled here. Unifor Local 1075 President Dominic Pasqualino says he's happy that a lot of manufacturing assembly is being done here in Canada, and he hopes that the new order and a push for a 60% Canadian content ruling will lead to more.
Layoffs for these people that would probably happen at the end of this year will not happen. That it'll be continued on, and also buys more time to get more customers for more of these cars. What they were planning earlier was, when this line was to slow down, was to send those people to the LRT contracts that we're going to be ramping up for. So perhaps that might mean more people being hired on to do the LRT when that speeds up.
Bombardier spokesperson Marc-Andre Lefebvre says the 60 cars will keep at least 180 people working at the Thunder Bay plant until 2015.
Every year the list is released, and every year the numbers seem to grow. Today the province unveiled the names on the so-called Sunshine List, or public sector workers who earn in excess of $100,000. Nearly 98,000 Ontario healthcare employees, teachers, police, firefighters, and civil servants made the cut last year. That's an increase of roughly 11% over 2012. Ryan Bonazza recounts some of the prominent local names on this year's edition of the Sunshine List.
For most, discussions about their yearly salary is off limits, and it's considered rude to ask. But Ontario's public sector employees are afforded no such privacy. The salaries of more than 700 local people were released to the public today. Once again, some of the highest wages were earned by those in the healthcare sector. Regional Health Sciences President Andre Robichaud's $385,000 salary was second only to the $405,000 earned by St. Joseph Care Group's mental health and addictions advisor Lois Hutchinson. Robichaud is followed by St. Joe's CEO Tracy Buckler at $315,000. Medical Officer of Health David Williams and Northwest Lynn head Laura Kokoczynski round out the top 5 with salaries of $299,000 and $265,000 respectively. Lakehead University President Brian Stevenson's $360,000 salary tops the list of local educators, followed by Jim Matter of Confederation College. He earned nearly $227,000 in 2013. Lakehead Board Director of Education Kathy Semenuk made nearly $196,000, while the Catholic Board's Joan Powell earned $172,000. City Manager Tim Camisso's $229,000 salary is once again the highest among the 249 city employees that made the list. Thunder Bay Police Chief J.P. Levesque and Deputy Chief Andy Hay earned $209,000 and $185,000 respectively. Greg Alexander made more than $185,000 as the city's Community and Emergency Services GM. Fire Chief John Hay is 5th on the list at $168,000. Other Sunshine List notables include Thunder Bay Superior North MPP and Cabinet Minister Michael Gravel. He earned nearly $166,000. Bill Morrow was paid $133,000 as the MPP for Thunder Bay Atikokan. Ryan Bonazzo, TBT News.
Now, the newly minted Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing is getting right down to work. After a decade on the backbenches, Bill Morrow was appointed to Cabinet this week. Dennis Ward has more on what the minister is expecting in the new role.
Municipal Affairs and Housing Minister Bill Morrow says he's hitting the ground running in his new post and admits there's a lot to get up to speed on. But as the former parliamentary assistant to former Minister Linda Jeffrey, Morrow does have a grasp on what his role is. The Thunder Bay Atikokan MPP doesn't feel the workload will take away from work in his riding, but Morrow is hesitant to say sitting at the cabinet table will help him champion local issues in a bigger way.
To say yes to that would be saying that, perhaps the last 10 years you haven't been as effective as you might otherwise have been, and I don't agree with that. I could draft a long list of things I think I've been able to advance on behalf of my constituents. So will it enhance it? I could certainly say it's not going to hurt it.
There are some who say Morrow's appointment to cabinet is pure politics and about shoring up this seat in the next provincial election. Morrow says comments like that just come with the territory.
They make me smile when they say it. I guess if they're going to say that this decision was made for that reason, you could say that there's been several dozen decisions that we've made in terms of supporting Northern Ontario and Thunder Bay Atikokan for the same reasons. So in that context, I think it doesn't really hold much water.
Morrow is excited to represent 440 plus municipalities in his new role, but with a northern lens. One thing he says he's really looking forward to is taking on more of a role in question period. Dennis Ward, TBT News.
The head of the Indian Friendship Centre says their group will hold a news conference next week to discuss their proposed youth centre. The partnership with the city fell apart earlier this week. Councillor Paul Pugh says he's very disappointed the project at the Port Arthur Prosvita building isn't moving ahead as planned. The $10 million youth centre had the support of council, but other orders of government weren't willing to come to the table with funding. The McKellar ward councillor feels a youth facility should still be located in his ward. Pugh doesn't believe providing existing community centres with extra funding for youth programs is the way to go.
It's a stopgap measure, but the youth centres the community centres by and large are too small to do anything substantial. I could see doing it for the time being until we get something that's more appropriate, but it's not a final solution by any means.
Pugh believes the city should continue to partner with the Indian Friendship Centre on a new plan for a standalone youth centre.
MP John Rafferty has tried to get the Harper Conservatives to reverse course on what he calls dishonest legislation. Bill C-23, known as the Fair Elections Act, would remove the power of registered voters to vouch for the residency of a citizen who lacks ID, providing or proving his or her local address. Rafferty says the change will disenfranchise hundreds of thousands of voters.
When will the minister realize that voters are not the problem in our electoral system? When will he understand that blocking my constituents in Thunder Bay, Rainy River, and thousands of other Canadians from voting, that it won't solve anything?
Speaker, I'm sure that his constituents in Thunder Bay are capable of producing any of the 39 different pieces of acceptable ID. Now, he should be clear with his constituents that they do not require photo ID or government ID to vote. They can choose from 39, which include things like utility bills, OAS or employment insurance checks, statements of attestation from an Aboriginal reserve, an Indian status card, a student card. The list goes on and on. It's 39 different options. Wow. We just think it's reasonable that people bring some form of ID when they show up to vote. Thanks.
A group of students from Lakehead University are being given a first-hand look at the aftermath of war in Europe. LU's new battlefield tourism course will see 11 students travel to Belgium, Holland, Normandy, and other parts of northern France next month to learn about the First World War. The students and their leader, Associate Professor Harvey Lemle, dug out the snow today around the First World War memorial sign at the corner of Beverly Street and Memorial Avenue. Lemle says many of the students have ancestors who fought in the war, and he believes it's important for them to see the sites as part of their education. Sarah Schruff says she recently discovered her great-grandfather's pilgrimage passport for Vimy Ridge.
I think this trip is an amazing opportunity because not only is it the centennial of the First World War, we're going to be taking part in a lot of different ceremonies. Some big ones are we're going to be going to Vimy Ridge. We're taking part in the Meningate Last Post ceremony, which is really cool. They play the last post every day at 8 o'clock sharp. We're also going to be in Amsterdam for Liberation Day, and the Canadians liberated Holland, so it's a really big deal that we're going over there for that.
Actually I'm going to one of the sites of Denny Delaron, who's from Lake Helen. He's a First Nation veteran, and we're going to commemorate his gravesite too. So I think it's important to recognize the contributions of not only Canada, but of Thunder Bay.
The class leaves for Europe on April 25th for a 10-day battleground experience.
Confederation College played host to a career fair today, one aimed at providing job opportunities for students in the technology field. This fair was started by Todd Patterson, who was laid off a few years ago before returning to school as a mature student. Patterson came up with the idea in hopes of bringing jobs right to students finishing their education. Patterson now attends the fair as a representative for his employer, who had a booth at today's event. Other key employers there included Thunder Bay Engineering, DST Forum, and Hatch Mott McDonald.
I was with the initial event. I mean, it gave me an opportunity to network, meet people, and sort of raise the interest of professionals. And it certainly helped with my employment. I didn't have really that much trouble at all finding a job.
Being a student myself, I know sort of what the job market is like. I also know what students are looking for as well. So it just makes it easier to appeal to students, I guess, if it's student run.
Patterson says this is one of the best opportunities he's seen for young professionals to get their foot in the door. The event also provided many speakers giving talks about the growing technology field.
More than 100 brave souls are expected to take part in the annual Polar Bear Plunge tomorrow afternoon at Prince Arthur's Landing. The plunge area was carved out of the thick ice on the lake yesterday. This is the 5th consecutive year for the event, and there have been a few changes to the setup. Participants will jump from the dock near the boat launch and then can get right back onto the shore. This means participants can get in and out more quickly, and spectators will have a better viewing area. Organizer Warren Gertuga is very pleased with the new setup and even more pleased by the amount of donations they've raised.
$16,000 online pledges prior to the event, and we ended up with $40,000 on the day of the plunge. This year, as of this morning, we had $28,000 raised already, and we're anticipating to exceed what we made last year. Last year we had 120 people. This year we're anticipating upwards of more than 250 people. Right now we've got 230 registered, but even as I just pulled up here, I got an email about 6 more people that want to register. So we take registration right up until the time of the plunge.
There will be divers in the water to make sure everyone is safe, and warm-up stations are also being provided to help unfreeze the plungers. The event starts at 2 o'clock tomorrow with school groups jumping into the freezing lake starting at 3 o'clock.
That unfreezing thing is